Today is day 5 for the Come Follow Me study for this week, May 25th through the 31st. The Lord raised up a deliverer. Judges 2 through 4, 6 through 8, and 13 through 16. Friday, May 29th, 2026, Judges 7 through 8. Judges 7. Gideon's army is reduced to 300. Judges 7 1 through 2. Then Jerubbaal, who is Gideon, and all the people that were with him, rose up early and pitched beside the wall of Herod, so that the host of the Midianites were on the north side of them, by the hill of Moreh, in the valley. And the Lord said unto Gideon, The people that are with thee are too many for me to give the Midianites into their hands, lest Israel vaunt themselves against me, saying, Mine own hand has saved me. Though only the tribes from the north, Manasseh, Asher, Zebulun, and Naphtali, joined his campaign, these were more than enough for the purposes of the Lord at the time. Eventually, the 32,000 were reduced to 300, that the help of the Lord might be apparent to Israel. This is an example of the way the Lord works, not by physical or worldly force, but by divine power and miracles. The children of Israel would know that they were delivered out of the land of Egypt not by their own strength, but by the power of God. Their faith was to be in God, not in their armaments or their own strength. The principle involved here is expressed in this New Testament scripture. God hath chosen the weak things of the world to confound the things which are mighty. We see the principle at work here in the episode of David and Goliath, and in the account of Gideon's victory with his army of 300 men, a number reduced from a larger one. The Israelites had to believe that God would deliver them over and beyond what they could do themselves. They were not to trust in the arm of flesh. This is still the way the Lord works among the children of men today. Judges 7:3. Now therefore go to, proclaim in the ears of the people, saying, Whosoever is fearful and afraid, let him return and depart early from Mount Gilead, or Mount Bilboa. And there returned of the people 22,000, and there remained 10,000. Elder John A. Widtsoe said, Gideon, mighty man of ancient Israel, was called to rescue his people from a 7-year oppression by the Midianites and associated people. He raised therefore an army of 32,000 men to fight the enemy. But in those days, as in ours, battles were won not by numbers, but by men of quality. So he was commanded to proclaim, Whosoever is fearful and afraid, let him return. And there returned of the people 22,000. It was a high percentage. It is probably as high in the world today. Nevertheless, Gideon's army was stronger because the faithful ones were left. Fear never fails to lead a man or a group of people to weakness and to ultimate failure. The fears of man are legion. They float to the surface from submerged corners in our consciousness. They are often the products of our imagination. Really, what have we to fear? Righteous men, if united, are masters of their generation and can and should cast out all such fears, and should sternly set about to root out such weeds of existence. False teachings fall before truth. It would be better for man's happiness to substitute for such fears a proper control of the use of his powers, whether of his natural endowment or those that have been discovered by the patient searchers of truth. Judges 7, 4 through 8. And the Lord said unto Gideon, The people are yet too many. Bring them down unto the water, and I will try or test them for thee there. And it shall be, that of whom I say unto thee, This shall go with thee, the same shall go with thee, and whomsoever I say unto thee, This shall not go with thee, the same shall not go. So he brought down the people unto the water, and the Lord said unto Gideon, Every one that lappeth up the water with his tongue, as a dog lappeth, him shall ye set by himself. Likewise every one that boweth down upon his knees to drink. And the number of them that lapped, putting their hand to their mouth, were 300 men. But all the rest of the people bowed down upon their knees to drink water. And the Lord said unto Gideon, By the 300 men that lapped will I save you, and deliver the Midianites into thine hand. And let all the other people go every man unto his place. So the people took victuals in their hand, and their trumpets, and he set all the rest of Israel every man unto his tent, and retained those 300 men, and the host of Midian was beneath him in the valley. Use Judges 7, 4 through 7, this week's activity page, or the Army of Gideon in Old Testament stories, to teach your children about how the Lord made Israel's army smaller. Why did the Lord want Gideon's army to be so small? Judges 7, 9 through 12. And it came to pass the same night that the Lord said unto him, Arise, get thee down unto the host, for I have delivered it into thine hand. But if thou fear to go down with Phurah thy servant down to the host, and thou shalt hear what they say. And afterward shall thine hands be strengthened to go down unto the host. Then went he down to Phurah his servant unto the outside of the armed men that were in the host. And the Midianites and the Amalekites and all the children of the east lay along the valley like grasshoppers for multitude, and their camels were without number, as the sand by the seaside for multitude, against the formidable might of camel-mounted marauders. Strategy and the help of the Lord gave the Israelites success, where hand-to-hand combat would have been disastrous. It is now known that the use of camels for military purposes by the nomadic desert riders was only beginning to be common in those times, 12th to 10th century BC, and of course, the first tribes to use them had the advantage. Judges 7, 13 through 15. And when Gideon was come, behold, there was a man that told a dream unto his fellow, and said, Behold, I dreamed a dream, and lo, a cake of barley bread tumbled into the host or camp of Midian, and came unto a tent. And I smote it that it fell, and overturned it, that the tent lay along, or the tent lay flat. And his fellow answered and said, This is nothing else save the sword of Gideon, the son of Joash, a man of Israel. For into his hand hath God delivered Midian, and all the host. And it was so, when Gideon heard the telling of the dream, and the interpretation thereof, that he worshipped, and returned into the host of Israel, and said, Arise, for the Lord hath delivered into your hand the host of Midian. Gideon's army frightened the Midianite armies with trumpets and lights. Your children could draw pictures of a sword, shield, trumpet, lamp, and pitcher, and talk about which of these objects they would want in a battle. Then they could read Judges 7:16 to learn what the Lord told Gideon's army to use. Judges 7:16 through 18. And he divided the 300 men into 3 companies, and he put a trumpet in every man's hand, with empty pitchers, and lamps within the pitchers. And he said unto them, Look unto me, and do likewise. And behold, when I come to the outside of the camp, it shall be that, as I do, so shall ye do. When I blow with a trumpet, I and all that are with me, then blow ye the trumpets also on every side of all the camp, and say, The sword of the Lord and of Gideon. As you read about the battle in Judges 7:19 through 21, share with each other what you learn about the Lord from his story. Judges 7:19. So Gideon and the 100 men that were with him came unto the outside of the camp in the beginning of the middle watch, and they had but newly set the watch, and they blew the trumpets, and brake the pitchers that were in their hands. Ancient Israel divided the 12 hours of the night into 3 watches. The middle watch would have been from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. After the dispersion of Israel, the Jews continued the practice. In New Testament times, the Romans divided the night into 4 watches. Judges 7:20. And the 3 companies blew the trumpets and brake the pitchers, and held the lamps in their left hands, and the trumpets in their right hands, and blew withal, and they cried, The sword of the Lord and of Gideon. With their hands occupied by horns and lamps, all Gideon's army could do was shout, The sword of the Lord and of Gideon. This battle cry likely emphasized their trust in the Lord and his chosen leader to deliver them from the Midianites. The Midianites fight among themselves, flee, and are defeated by Israel. Judges 7:21 through 25. And they stood every man in his place round about the camp, and all the host ran and cried and fled. And the 300 blew the trumpets And the Lord set every man's sword against his fellow, even throughout all the host. And the host fled to Beth Shittah and Zererath, and to the border of Abel Meholah, unto Tabbath. And the men of Israel gathered themselves together out of Naphtali, and out of Asher, and out of all Manasseh, and pursued after the Midianites. And Gideon sent messengers throughout all Mount Ephraim, saying, Come down against the Midianites, and take before them the waters unto Bethbara and Jordan. Then all the men of Ephraim gathered themselves together, and took the waters unto Bethbara and Jordan. And they took 2 princes of the Midianites, Oreb and Zeb. And they slew Oreb upon the rock Oreb, and Zeb they slew at the winepress of Zeb, and pursued Midian, and brought the heads of Oreb and Zeb to Gideon on the other side of Jordan. Judges 8. Gideon pursues and destroys the Midianites. Judges 8, 1-16. And the men of Ephraim said unto him, Why hast thou served us thus, that thou callest us not, when thou wentest to fight with the Midianites? And they did chide with him sharply. And he said unto them, What have I done now in comparison of you? Is not the gleaning of the grapes of Ephraim better than the vintage of Abiezer? God hath delivered into your hands the princes of Midian, Oreb and Zeb. And what was I able to do in comparison of you? Then their anger was abated toward him, when he had said that. And Gideon came to Jordan and passed over, he and the 300 men that were with him, faint, yet pursuing them. And he said unto the men of Succoth, Give, I pray you, loaves of bread unto the people that follow me, for they be faint. And I am pursuing after Zebah and Zalmunna, kings of Midian. And the princes of Succoth said, Are the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna now in thine hand, that we should give bread unto thine army? And Gideon said, Therefore, when the Lord hath delivered Zebah and Zalmunna into mine hand, then I will tear your flesh from the thorns of the wilderness and with briars. And he went up thence to Peniel, and spake unto them likewise. And the men of Peniel answered him as the men of Succoth had answered him. And he spake also unto the men of Peniel, saying, When I come again in peace, I will break down this tower. Now Zebah and Zalmunna were in Calcor, and their host with them, about 15,000 men, all that were left of all the hosts of the children of the east. For there fell 120,000 men that drew sword. And Gideon went up by the way of them that dwelt in tents on the east of Nobah and Jogbehah, and smote the host, for the host was secure. And when Zebah and Zalmunna fled, he pursued after them, and took the 2 kings of Midian, Zebah and Zalmunna, and discomforted all the host. And Gideon the son of Joash returned from battle before the sun was up, and caught a young man of the men of Succoth, and inquired of him. And he described unto him the princes of Succoth, and the elders thereof, even 70 men. And he came unto the men of Succoth, and said, Behold, Zebah and Zalmunna, with whom he did upbraid me, saying, Are the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna now in thine hand, that we should give bread unto thy men that are weary? And he took the elders of the city, and thorns of the wilderness and briars, and with them he taught the men of Succoth. As they pursued the remnants of the Midianite army, Gideon's valiant little band of 300 grew faint from hunger, and sought food from the people of Succoth, a town of Gad or Gilead, which lay on the east side of the Jordan, not far from Jericho. The Succothites refused to give Gideon's men the food they needed because they had not yet actually conquered the Midianite kings. The people of Peniel, the place where Jacob had stopped many years before and wrestled with God's messenger, also refused aid. Perhaps they were afraid that Gideon would fail to capture and subdue the fleeing kings, and that later the Midianites would return and punish them for aiding Gideon. Whatever the reason, these events illustrate the tragic fragmentation of apostate Israel. Since the Midianites lived in the deserts of Arabia, Gad and the other tribes east of the Jordan were most vulnerable to their marauding raids. Yet instead of joining Midian in his attempt to eliminate the threat once and for all, these Gadites flatly refused to get involved. Gideon was furious and promised that once he finished with the Midianites, he would return to deal with these traitors. In the case of Succoth, Gideon promised to return and tear, the Hebrew literally means thresh, their flesh with briars and thorns. Yet when Gideon did return, the record says he taught them with briars and thorns. Many of the ancient manuscripts show this change to be a scribal error. Instead of he taught, Hugabent reads he tore, and this is not only agreeable to what Gideon had threatened, but is supported by the Vulgate, Septuagint, Chaldaic, Syriac, and Arabic. The Hebrew text might have been easily corrupted in this place by the change of shin to ain, letters very similar to each other. This punishment was probably a figurative term and not necessarily an actual whipping with thorn branches. What this punishment consisted in, I cannot say. It may mean a severe punishment, as if he had said, I will thresh your flesh with briars and thorns, as corn is threshed out with threshing instruments, and ye shall be trodden down under the feet of my victorious army, as the corn is trodden out with the feet of the ox. Such harsh punishment was justified because of their refusal to help Gideon's army. Succoth and Peniel threatened the whole nation of Israel. Their act was thus equivalent to high treason. Judges 8:17-21. And he beat down the tower of Peniel and slew the men of the city. Then said he unto Zebah and Zalmunna, What manner of men were they whom ye slew at Tabor? And they answered, As thou art, so were they. Each one resembled the children of a king. And he said, They were my brethren, even the sons of my mother. As the Lord liveth, if ye had saved them alive, I would not slay you. And he said unto Jether his firstborn, Up and slay them. But the young drew not his sword, for he feared, because he was yet a youth. Then Zebah and Zalmunna said, Rise thou and fall upon us, for as the man is, so is his strength. And Gideon arose and slew Zebah and Zalmunna, and took away the ornaments that were on their camels' necks. Zebah and Zalmunna did not want Jether to slay them. To have a boy slay them would be a great dishonor, but to die quickly under the hand of such a great warrior as Gideon would preserve their honor. Compare this request with Abimelech's request of his armor-bearer to slay him lest men say a woman had killed him. Gideon frees the children of Israel but refuses their invitation to reign as king over them. Judges 8:22-23. Then the men of Israel said unto Gideon, Rule thou over us, both thou and thy son's son also, for thou hast delivered us from the hand of Midian. And Gideon said unto them, I will not rule over you, neither shall my son rule over you, the Lord shall rule over you. These verses give proof of Gideon's great faith and righteousness. The people sought to make him king because of his greatness in victory. Had he consented, Gideon would have been leading support to the idea that through his own power he had won the battle. By refusing the request, Gideon reminded them where the real source of their victory lay and whom they should view as their king. Judges 8:24-27. And Gideon said unto them, I would desire a request of you, that ye would give me every man the earrings of his prey, for they had golden earrings, because they were Ishmaelites. And they answered, We will willingly give thee. And they spread a garment, and did cast therein every man the earrings of his prey. And the weight of the gold earrings that was requested was 1,700 shekels of gold, beside ornaments and collars, or crescents and pendants, and purple raiment that was on the kings of Midian, and beside the chains that were about their camels' necks. And Gideon made an ephod, probably here a medallion of gold, to adorn the priest's ephod. Later it was at times revered. Therefore, and put it in his city, even in Ophrah. And all Israel went thither a-whoring after it, which thing became a snare unto Gideon and to his house. An ephod was part of a high priest's clothing and was occasionally used by some as a means to seek God's direction. In making an ephod from the spoils of war, Gideon may have intended to make a fitting memorial honoring God's part in the victory. However, the Israelites eventually treated it like an idol. An unfortunate anticlimactic development arose due to Gideon's mistaken zeal in making a new ephod, part of the garment of the chief priest in Israel, out of some of the precious things gathered from the smitten soldiers of the enemy. When the text says Israelites went a whoring after it, the idiom means they looked upon it as if it were an idol, and idol worship is often condemned in these terms as infidelity to God. Gideon's intention was to use the spoils of war to make a fitting memorial honoring God's part in the victory, but the Israelites were quick to turn to false gods and view the ephod as though it were an idol. Judges 8:28-31. Thus was Midian subdued before the children of Israel, so that they lifted up their heads no more. And the country was in quietness 40 years in the days of Gideon. And Jerubbaal the son of Joash went and dwelt in his own house. And Gideon had 70 sons of his body begotten, for he had many wives. And his concubine that was in Shechem, she also bare him a son, whose name he called Abimelech. Gideon dies, and Israel returns to idolatry. Judges 8:32-35. And Gideon the son of Joash died in a good old age, and was buried in the sepulchre of Joash his father, in Ophrah of the Abiezrites. And it came to pass, as soon as Gideon was dead, that the children of Israel turned again, and went to whoring after Baalim, and made Baal-berith their god. And the children of Israel remembered not the Lord their God, who had delivered them out of the hands of all their enemies on every side. Neither showed they kindness to the house of Jerubbaal, namely Gideon, according to all the goodness which he had showed unto Israel. What do you feel the Lord is trying to teach you with this account? How have you seen the Lord do his work in ways that seemed unlikely? Judges 9. Gideon's son Abimelech is made king. Abimelech slays his 70 brothers. Jotham tells a fable of trees, choosing a king. The Shechemites conspire against Abimelech. Abimelech is slain at Thebes. Josephus, the noted Jewish historian, usually spoke highly of his people. Yet his commentary on the condition of the Israelites during the period of the Judges was anything but praise. After this, the Israelites grew effeminate as to fighting any more against their enemies, but applied themselves to the cultivation of the land, which producing them great plenty and riches, they neglected the regular disposition of their settlement, and indulged themselves in luxury and pleasures. Nor were they any longer careful to hear the laws that belonged to their political government, whereupon God was provoked to anger and put them in mind, first, how contrary to his directions they had spared the Canaanites, and after that, how those Canaanites, as opportunity served, used them very barbarously. Extraordinary courage was required for an Israelite to be devoted to the Lord during this era. Unfortunately, this situation arose not because of pressure from outside of Israel, but because of pressure from within. Gideon's neighbors, not a group of pagan Canaanites, were worked into a murderous frenzy when Gideon destroyed the altar of Baal. Jotham's prophecy was uttered against his own brother, not against some Philistine king. Instead, Israel's pattern did not stem from the pagan masses they faced. It lay within their own hearts. Their greatest enemies were not the power-hungry Midianites or Moabites, but inward vacillation, apathy, disobedience, and rebellion. Their outward enemies raged through them constantly only because the inward weaknesses raged unchecked also. The Canaanites and Philistines are gone today, but are not the offspring of their gods metamorphosed into modern form and made intelligently acceptable still with us? And what of apathy, disobedience, vacillation, and rebellion? Is not our greatest enemy within? If so, then the same kind of courage displayed by the people of whom you have just read is as necessary now as it was then.